You are listening to Three Kitchens Podcast, hosted by Erin Walker and Heather Dyer.
We're on a mission to inspire other home cooks just like us to be brave and try something new. Let's learn to cook better and eat great food.
All right. Well, hello and welcome to Three Kitchens Podcast. I'm Erin Walker. I'm joined with my co-host, Heather Dyer.
Hello, hello.
And we are here to talk about new recipes. Just the two of us.
And I have no idea what you've got up your sleeve, your
one's
crocheted sleeve. No, what are you wearing?
My
It's
poncho.
Really cute. What's up that poncho sleeve, Erin, for today? Did you knit the whole thing?
I did. This is what I did as my
Wow.
child went to hockey. I sat in the car under a blanket and knitted while I listened to true crime.
That's amazing. Look at
Nothing
that.
creepy
Beautiful
about that.
sweater. No, it's not creepy. Are you kidding me? And you're talking to podcast listeners.
Exactly.
Everyone knows true crime is a genre. Even if you're not into it, you get it.
I just always thought it was funny that I was sitting in like my
the
dark.
dark.
It's how you keep warm when it's cold out. You get your heart racing.
Oh, yeah, good point.
All right. I am going to hold up on my screen, Heather, the mystery item that will be the focus of today's episode. Are you ready for
Ooh.
this?
I am ready. What the heck is that? Let me guess. Let me try to take a guess. Is it some sort of yam or it looks like a root?
It is definitely a root. It is a big
Yucca?
You got it. Yuca or cassava is what it is known as.
Oh, yucca. I was saying it wrong.
Yuca. So here's the thing. We've gone down these pronunciation trails before. So cassava and yuca with one C in it, Y-U-C-A, are the same thing,
Okay.
more or less. They're just different names. The yucca plant, which is a Mexican cactus type plant that has like a big tall flower, if you've seen it out in the desert,
yes,
and the spiky
yes.
leaves,
Yeah.
not related to this at all.
Okay, so what I said was a real thing. It's just the wrong thing.
Exactly. You got it.
Okay.
All right. So what I've got here is a cassava. It is a root. It is brown. It has a very, very thick skin. I'm going to say it's waxed for transportation. I'm assuming it doesn't feel like this when it comes out of the ground. It's got a very waxy texture and I'm very sure it's waxed. And so it is a starch that is high in vitamin C, calcium, and potassium. It is native to Brazil. You can't eat it raw because it has something in it that needs to be cooked out or it's poisonous.
Oh dear, one of those things. We've had a couple of those that scared us a little bit.
Yeah, so here
In
we
the
go.
past. I'm trying to remember what they were.
Yeah. Oh, the fiddleheads.
And then there was the lavender tea.
Labrador tea.
Labrador tea. Sorry, not lavender. Labrador tea. Yes.
So you got to
This is
cook it.
fun.
You can't eat it raw. And did you know, this is what I learned from it too, the starch in there is what's used to make tapioca. So
Oh,
we've all heard of tapioca.
for some reason, I had always had in my head that tapioca was its own thing, like
Yeah.
a plant.
Yeah, me too. I had no idea.
Oh,
I learned this just this morning.
that's some serious prepping for this episode. That's like,
I was up early. I had my coffee. I'm so excited about this. This wonderful root has been sitting in my kitchen now for 3 months.
what?
I picked it up and was like, I'm going to do this episode because I also was at my local Latin American market and picked up some cassava flour because you can also get it in flour form.
Okay.
You can get it like this, you can get it floured, or you can get it already peeled and frozen. You can buy the flesh like that as well. Those are the three ways
Okay.
that I have seen cassava.
Hmm.
And I've had it before in Cuba where they boil it and then they've got like olive oil and maybe lime or something on it. It's very, very plain. It's very much like a cross between a potato and a dumpling is how I would describe the texture.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So for our gluten-free friends out there, it's a great substitute for a starch. So
Okay.
and it's something different that can come across your table. I love all these different things that we have access to because
Mm-hmm.
our big world is right at our doorstep. And so I'm going to try two recipes since I have two forms of this wonderful root.
Well, I expect nothing less.
I know.
Perhaps more even.
Two is my maximum.
Okay.
I have a feeling peeling this thing is going to be an effort.
A very sharp knife.
Yeah, it says to well, I'll talk about it in the second half
Okay.
once I've actually
Yeah.
done it because I'm not going to pretend I know what I'm doing because I don't yet. I'm going to make a roasted cassava.
Mm.
So you boil it, and then you've got olive oil and a spice mixture, and then you pop it onto a baking sheet and then roast it just like you would a potato.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's going to be a great way to do the whole root.
You have to boil it first. Is that to get rid of whatever the toxic element is?
I'm thinking, yeah. And then with this cassava flour, I'm going to go down an Ecuadorian sort of South American recipe on this one.
Mm.
And it's called Pan de Yuca or cheese bread. So you mix your cassava starch or cassava flour with cheese, baking powder, salt, butter, eggs, and water to make like little balls, almost like your gougères, I'm thinking.
Oh.
And then it gets put it on a parchment paper, high heat, a little bit of a broil in the oven.
Oh.
And the way these looked on the video that I saw for this were like these moist, pull apart, cheesy little buns. And if you
Mm.
can't have gluten, you got to have something that's like that chewy, bready texture. And I feel like
Oh, it
with this
sounds
cheese,
interesting.
I've also seen that you can make arepas with these, which are a fried bread with cheese or other things in the middle. They look really good, but again, they're often deep fried, and we're not
Oh,
going down that lane. So
no,
these little
too much.
guys are baked in the oven. So
Mm.
that I think I can do. So I'm going to do some playing with a different gluten-free starch and see what we can get out of it. I always see these at the grocery store.
Yeah, when you pulled it up, I was like, oh, I've seen that. I just have never paid attention to what it is exactly.
Yeah.
Hmm. That's the kind of thing that I would walk by and be like, that looks like it's requires some learning and some work.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm glad that you're doing it because
So you're
then,
like, oh, I'll know Erin will pick that up. Because when I walk
well,
by weird things at the grocery store, or maybe not weird,
new to
things I'm
you.
not used to seeing, I'm
Yeah.
like, ooh, what can I do with that?
You are very good at doing that. I love when you have a mystery item that you've picked up because I know that I'm going to learn something new and it's probably going to be good. There's a reason there's like a stack of them at the grocery store, right? People obviously like to eat them, so they must be good.
Yeah,
That's what I always think. Like it can't be terrible or there wouldn't be a big pile of them at the grocery store.
exactly. We'll see how labor intensive it might be. I'm a little intimidated by the thickness of this root. Like it feels
Mm.
like a tree branch.
Yeah,
I'm
it
not
looks
gonna
like one.
lie. And it looks like one.
It's
So,
like the size of my forearm.
yeah,
Or
that
oh, even bigger maybe. Yeah, yeah,
well,
it's
maybe turn it
similar.
the other way. Oh
Maybe your
yeah.
bicep.
There's a lot of different ways that you can use the cassava flour to make like cakes and sweets. I didn't go
Mm.
down that road, but I think for anyone who's looking for another gluten-free alternative starch that you can cook with, this seems like a good option.
Well, Erin's going to give you some tips.
Hi, listener. If you're into all the foodie things like us, you're probably scrolling food, photos, and videos on at least one of the social apps. Whichever social media app is your favorite, we're probably there too.
Connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Threads, or TikTok, or all of them if you're as crazy as we are. Say hi and let us know what recipe you'd like us to tackle next. Links to our socials are in the show notes. Now, let's get back to the show.
Yeah, cassava.
Yeah.
What to say, what to say. Well, I made the roasted cassava and I made the pan de yuca or the cheesy balls. How did they transfer to your house, Heather?
They were really good the day that you brought them. I had one.
Okay.
And the next day, not as good.
Yeah, they didn't really.
They didn't
They're
hold
like
up.
you eat them when you make them
Yeah.
only was the way I felt about them too. Okay, good. I'm glad you had them when I delivered them fresh because I was like, oh boy, if she waited a day, we might be scrapping this episode.
I tried I tried warming them up. And my husband
Yeah.
ate one or two. He thought they were okay, but they just get a little dry.
Yes. Okay. So I would say overall this is a dry root.
Mm.
So let's start with the whole cassava. It was that big tuberous giant that I
Tree
had with
trunk
me.
looking
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. Cutting it up was kind of like chopping up, like you know how yam can be really difficult to get through just because it's like really dense and hard on the
Mhm.
inside. It was a lot like that. But once you kind of cut it into pieces and then stood them up, and then I was able to just kind of cut the skin off the outside, and then it was all good. So I cut them, diced them up, and boiled them in a pot of salted water for 15 minutes as it recommended. While those were boiling, I just in a bowl combined olive oil, oregano, parsley, onion powder, garlic powder, and cumin, salt and pepper, and just made like a sauce to toss them in. So once they came out of the oven, I tossed them in that coating, popped them onto a baking dish that I lined in parchment paper, and then put them into the oven for 30 minutes. It was like very dry potatoes. I wasn't super excited with how this turned out. I felt like there were a few pieces, especially the smaller ones, that were a little bit more tender and less.
It's very fibrous.
Yeah.
So it's not like gonna get soft like a
No.
potato. It's very similar to a potato in terms of, I think, in terms of flavor,
Yeah.
generally kind of what it is. It's similar to a potato, but
Hmm.
it's more tougher. I don't know if that's the right word. Tough. It's kind of like it's very firm.
It's like an undercooked potato that's kind of dry and too starchy still.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
I thought it tasted good, like the flavor of it is good, and I liked what you did with it. The seasoning was really yummy.
Hmm.
Um, but I thought, it's decent, but I would just opt for a potato, to be honest.
Yeah, I think I would just opt for a potato too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't super excited about how this turned out. I was hoping it would be softer and chewier, more like a softer dumpling texture.
Mm.
So I don't know what to do with this one. I would recommend you just do it on potatoes.
The seasoning was great.
The seasoning was nice.
Mhm.
So,
Okay, so cassava it's mid, as the kids would say.
is that what they say now?
Yeah, mid. Just
Mid.
means it's like okay, just okay.
Okay. Thanks for teaching me. I'll remember that one. I wonder too, like, how old was that cassava that I had? Because it did sit in my house for at least 2 months, no word of a lie. And then how long did it sit on the store shelf? I'm assuming if you're actually digging these things up or you have them locally, like we tend to say a lot about things from other places, it ain't great once it transfers. And I wonder if it just loses
Mm,
some of that nice freshness.
yeah. And like, isn't it
Da-na-na-na.
true too that when things have to travel far to wherever they're going to be sold, that they tend to harvest them earlier and that way they're not overripe by the time it gets to you? So maybe it's the case of one of those things that was like they harvest them too
Yeah,
soon
yeah,
and then they're sort of kept longer because they want them to last longer. By the time they get to the
yeah.
store, they were too underripe to begin with, and now they've been sitting, and I don't know.
Yeah, they didn't get to fully develop
Maybe we don't know. What do we know?
theories on it. I mean, I have eaten cassava and it was a lot more soft and tender and not quite as fibrous as you shall call it.
Hmm.
My husband's first comment was like, "Oh, you kind of fucked up the potatoes tonight."
How
And
kind.
I was like, "Oh, well, it's
not a
Cassava.
potato.
Oh, that explains it.
Oh. And then he's like, God, I hope she doesn't make those again.
That was a mid recipe.
I'm probably using it wrong, but anyway, I think that's what they say.
Someone's cringing on the other side of this. Oh,
My
listen to those
13-year-old. Ugh.
ladies talking like that. Oh, so embarrassing. So the next thing I experimented with was the Pan de Yuca, which used a cassava starch or yuca flour, and it was this yuca flour, mozzarella cheese that's been grated, baking powder, salt, melted butter, eggs, and then it recommends 2 to 4 tablespoons of water or milk or more if the dough is dry. This dough was really, really dry. And in
Mm.
fact, I think I could have even added more water than I did. I ended up watching the video that was on this website where I found the recipe, and it was a much stickier, moister dough, whereas I was like making pie dough crust. Like it was very, so I just kept adding water and in the end, I added 27 tablespoons of water because thinking that suddenly it would change, I had to go tablespoon by tablespoon.
Oh, yeah.
That didn't work. And I also did it by hand because it says it's actually very easy to prepare by hand. When you're adding 27 tablespoons of water to try and get I should have just popped this in the mixer
Mm.
and made this and just kept adding water until it was a sticky dough, but still forms into balls if you wet your hands. So I don't think I quite got there with this. I think it could have been a more moist dough.
Well, and that might explain why it was a dry little bun. What would you call it?
Cheese ball bun?
It did remind me of the gorgère as you had
Yeah.
envisioned when you first read the recipe, and I think it was similar in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Different, obviously a different kind of final product, but similar in terms of like if you were to make this and serve it, you would probably have it as a side, like with soup or a stew or I don't know, like that. It kind of was a similar type of thing.
Yeah. And when they came fresh out of the oven and I picked up these piping hot little balls and put them to cool, like just once they were ready to touch, once you squeeze them open, like the cheese was kind of stringy and throughout the whole thing, and it was soft and yummy to eat like that. But as you said, they didn't hold up to being reheated or kept like overnight. They kind of turned into like hard little hockey pucks.
The one I had the first day, like I said, was quite good. I liked the flavor of it. I really felt like you got the cassava flavor from it.
Yeah.
And I think it went well with cheese. So I can see the vision for this.
Yeah.
I could see it. And I think there would be a tasty little snack.
Yeah.
It's just getting, like you said, getting the moistness right.
Yeah, I would like to try again. I think I'm going to make half as much because this made 20 some. Oh, I didn't write down my final number, but it was like 20 of these little balls.
Yeah.
So they were just 60 grams of dough and they didn't rise or puff up that much. Again, I think maybe that would have changed with some more water.
Mm.
But I'd like to go back and finesse this a little bit, use a different cheese, like a much softer mozzarella, so that maybe it's got some more moisture in it to lend itself to this recipe. And again, more water.
You're feeling a little
Huh.
disappointed, I can tell. This is what happens often. We have done this so many times and we will continue to do it, is find something that we've never eaten or cooked with. Maybe we've eaten it, but someone else has cooked it. And we want to try it for ourselves and see what comes of it. And it doesn't always work out great. Like this has happened before. This happened to me with the frickin' artichokes. I will
Yes.
never stop referencing
The artichokes.
failure of those artichokes. Maybe we're just meant to eat a potato. I don't know.
Maybe we're just meant to eat a potato. Yeah. So I'm gonna riff on this again. I'm going to just half it so that I don't have as many. Hopefully make a moister batter or dough and then get some better measurements with that. And then I think it'll be, because fresh out of the oven when it's hot and it has that moisture, totally tasty. The next day, I could throw it at people speeding in my school zone.
Could have gone and played like street hockey with it, maybe. Or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't quite that bad, but
Womp womp.
yeah. Hey, it's good to know.
Now you know cassava.
Nice. Well, I'm glad you tried it. I don't want to be the only one who's like,
I'm here to hang myself out to dry too. And now for the fine print. Links to recipes and other things we talked about in this episode can be found in the show notes or on our website, www.threekitchenspodcast.com. Come say hello on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, YouTube, and TikTok. We'd love to connect. And if you enjoy the show, pass it on. Word of mouth is the #1 way people learn about new podcasts. Thank you so much for listening. Nobody listens to me, I tell ya.
poor Erin.